he said. "No one would ever want a single mom like you." And in that moment, something inside me shattered, and then hardened. Stay with me for a few minutes while I tell you what happened. If this story means something to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. My name's Emily. I was 29 when all of this started. I'd been with Kyle for almost 6 years. He was charming in the beginning, funny, ambitious, knew how to say all the right things. We met when I was 23, fresh out of school, working 2 jobs and dreaming of stability. Kyle made me believe we could build a life together. Things started to shift slowly, but I didn't notice at first. Kyle had a short temper, but he always apologized. He'd go cold for days, but then buy me flowers. I confused chaos for passion, and I stayed. At 28, I found out I was pregnant. I was scared, but when I told Kyle, he smiled. He said we'd figure it out together. For a moment, I let myself believe him. I imagined a family, a home, something permanent. But reality hit quick. He started pulling away while I was still pregnant. He'd come home late, wouldn't talk, spent more time on his phone than with me. I brushed it off. Maybe he was just stressed. Maybe the idea of becoming a dad was overwhelming him. I tried harder, cooked more, stayed cheerful, told him I understood. When our baby boy Liam was born, I hoped everything would change. And it did, just not the way I wanted. Kyle grew colder. He didn't hold Liam, didn't help with diapers, never woke up at night. I was exhausted, holding everything together while he acted like a guest in our home. Then one night, Liam had been crying for hours. I was pacing the living room, rocking him, near tears myself. Kyle was just sitting there, scrolling on his phone. I asked him if he could please hold the baby for a minute, so I could go to the bathroom. He didn't even look up. He just said flat and cold, "You're stuck now. No one's gonna want a single mom. You better make peace with that." It felt like all the air left the room. I stood there frozen, Liam still crying in my arms, my whole body shaking. I wanted to scream, to cry, to ask why he would say something so cruel. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the weight of his words crush whatever hope I had left. That night, something inside me broke. But it didn't stay broken. Something else started to grow in its place. I didn't know it yet, but that moment, that one sentence, was the beginning of something bigger. After that night, I tried to hold everything together, for Liam. I kept telling myself Kyle was just overwhelmed, that he'd come around, that deep down he still loved us. I didn't want my baby to grow up without a family, so I stayed. I cooked, cleaned, smiled through the silence. I told friends we were just tired, just adjusting. But the truth was, I was pretending everything was fine while everything was falling apart. Kyle stopped trying completely. He came home later and later. Some nights not at all. He'd mutter things under his breath, little jabs. "Maybe if you weren't always tired, you wouldn't look like that. You used to be fun, remember that?" He never yelled. He didn't have to. His words were like paper cuts, small, sharp, and constant. Money got tighter, even though he still had his job. When I asked about bills, he'd roll his eyes. "I'm the one working. You just stay home." But every time I brought up getting a part-time job, he shot it down. "And who's gonna watch Liam? Me? Get real." Then one day, I was doing laundry and his phone buzzed on the couch. I wasn't snooping, but I glanced and saw a name I didn't recognize. Amanda. A heart emoji. I picked up the phone. My hands were shaking. There were messages, dozens. Pictures. Plans. Jokes about me. I sat down. My whole body went cold. I waited until he came home that night. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just held up the phone and asked, "How long?" He looked at me, dead in the eye, and smirked. "Long enough to remember what it's like to be with someone who actually wants me." I don't know why that hit so hard. Maybe because deep down, I still wanted him to fight for us. Instead, he laughed, got up, went to the kitchen like nothing happened. That night, after I put Liam to sleep, I sat alone on the couch. And my mind drifted, back to a time when Kyle used to bring me flowers, when we used to dance in the kitchen after dinner, when he called me his future. Was that all fake? Or did he just stop loving me the second I became a mother? I started wondering if maybe I wasn't enough anymore, if I'd ruined everything just by being who I was now. But then Liam stirred in his crib, and I went to check on him. His little fingers wrapped around mine in his sleep. And in that tiny moment, I remembered, this is love. Quiet, real, honest love. And it was still mine. It didn't get better. If anything, Kyle's behavior only got worse. He started disappearing for entire nights, sometimes weekends. No calls. No texts. No explanations. When he did come home, he barely spoke to me or Liam. He'd grab food, throw his dirty clothes on the floor, and disappear into the bedroom with his phone. I stopped asking questions. What was the point? Every time I tried, he acted like I was nagging or trying to control him. "You knew what you signed up for," he'd snap. Or worse, he'd just ignore me completely. Liam was crawling by then, starting to babble, and he barely looked at him. A whole human being, our son, and Kyle acted like he didn't even exist. One night, Liam said Dada for the first time, reaching out toward Kyle as he walked through the door. And Kyle? He didn't even stop, just walked right past us, threw his keys on the table, and shut the bedroom door behind him. That night I didn't sleep. I waited until he left the next morning, then opened his laptop. I'd never gone through his stuff before, but something in me snapped. I was tired of living in fear and confusion. I had to know. What I found made me sick. Photos. Dozens of them. Him and Amanda on trips at her apartment, with her dog, even at some restaurant we used to go to together. The messages were worse. He told her I was crazy, clingy, and trapping him with the kid. He said I was no fun anymore, and that she was a breath of fresh air. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. I wanted to scream, to break something, but Liam was asleep in the next room. So I just sat there in silence, trying to breathe. When Kyle came home that night, I didn't wait. I stood in the doorway with his laptop open. I didn't say a word, just turned the screen toward him. He didn't look ashamed, didn't even flinch. He laughed. You done snooping? He said. Good. Now maybe you'll finally get it through your head. We're done. I told him to get out. Right there. I said I didn't care where he went, but he wasn't staying here another night. He rolled his eyes, grabbed his keys, and as he walked past me, he said, "You'll beg me to come back. Just wait. No one wants a single mom." When the door closed behind him, I slid down to the floor and cried harder than I ever had. The kind of cry that empties you out. But when it passed, when I'd cried every last tear, I sat there in the quiet, holding my knees, and I felt something unfamiliar. It wasn't hope. Not yet. It was resolve. A voice inside whispering, "Enough." The next morning, I woke up to an empty apartment. No Kyle. Just me and Liam. And even though my eyes were swollen and my body felt heavy, the silence felt clean. Like something toxic had finally left the room. I didn't waste time. That same week, I filed for custody. I didn't have a lawyer yet, but I filled out the forms myself, hands trembling the whole time. It was terrifying, but also strangely empowering, like I was finally doing something instead of waiting for Kyle to destroy whatever was left. Money was tight. I sold a few things online, canceled every subscription I could, and started looking for work. After 2 weeks of searching, I found a part-time job at a little fabric store 5 blocks from our apartment. It didn't pay much, but the owner, Mrs. Carver, was kind and let me bring Liam if I couldn't find a sitter. It was slow, quiet, and smelled like cotton and lavender. Something about it felt familiar, safe. The fabric reminded me of my mom. She used to sew all the time when I was little. Dresses, curtains, even toys. I hadn't touched a sewing machine in years, but one slow afternoon at the shop, I asked Mrs. Carver if I could try one out. She smiled and said, "Go for it." That night, after Liam fell asleep, I pulled out some scrap fabric I bought with my employee discount and started working on a baby blanket. My hands were clumsy at first, but the rhythm came back, stitch by stitch. The feel of the thread, the sound of the machine, it calmed me, grounded me. I finished the blanket a few nights later. It wasn't perfect, but it was soft and warm, with Liam's name stitched across one corner in pale blue. I hung it up on the inside of our apartment door with a little push pin. Just looking at it made me feel proud, like I had made something beautiful out of nothing. The next morning, one of the neighbors, an older woman from down the hall, knocked on my door. She pointed at the blanket and said, "Did you make that? It's lovely." Then another neighbor complimented it too. I didn't know them well, but their kind words felt like a little sunbeam breaking through everything I'd been buried under. It wasn't much, just fabric and thread. But that blanket was the first thing I'd done for myself in a long, long time. And it reminded me, I still had something to give. I didn't expect much from that first order. I charged $20, enough to cover fabric and a little extra. I stayed up late making it just right. A soft blue blanket with little stars stitched into the corners and a matching cap. When I handed it to the neighbor, she gasped, then hugged me so tightly I almost cried. A few days later, someone else knocked on my door. Her cousin wanted a set. Then a co-worker of Mrs. Carver's asked about a baby gift. And just like that, word started to spread. I didn't have a business plan or website, just my hands, my sewing machine, and Liam sleeping beside me in his bassinet while I worked. I kept every receipt, saved every dollar I earned. It wasn't much, but it was something. And it was mine. Each blanket I made felt like stitching a little more of myself back together. I wasn't just making baby things. I was making love into something you could hold. I made sure every item had a personal touch. A name, a favorite animal, a special message embroidered into the hem. People noticed. They felt the heart in it. I started calling them Liam's covers. Not officially, not yet. But it felt right. Like a little nod to the boy who unknowingly saved me. Then, one afternoon, as I was coming home from picking up more thread, I saw him, Kyle, leaning against the stair rail outside my building. He hadn't called, hadn't texted, just showed up like nothing had happened. He looked me up and down, like he was trying to figure out if I'd changed. "Still playing dress up with your sewing machine?" he said, smirking. "Thought you'd be done with that little hobby by now." I didn't say a word. I didn't owe him anything. I just walked past him, holding the bag of fabric against my chest. My hands were shaking, but not from fear this time, from restraint, because I wasn't that woman anymore, the one who begged, cried, waited for his attention. I walked into my apartment, shut the door, sat at my table, and started sewing again. I heard him knock once. Then silence. He left. That night, I finished a set for a little girl named Ella, lavender fabric, soft clouds stitched into the border. It was one of my best yet. I held it up and smiled, even as my eyes stung. Let him laugh. I had work to do. The orders didn't slow down, they picked up. One day I woke up to 3 text messages from different people, all asking if I could make a set for their baby showers. It felt surreal. I was still working part-time at the fabric store, still clipping coupons and stretching every dollar, but at night, I was building something. Liam's covers. That's what I started calling it officially. I made a small Instagram page and posted photos of my work, each one laid out on the kitchen table or hung carefully on the door like I'd done in the beginning. I didn't have fancy lighting or professional pictures, just love, honesty, and a little boy smiling in the background. My living room turned into a tiny workspace, one end for Liam's toys, the other for fabric and thread. He'd sleep in his bassinet beside me, soft lullabies playing in the background, while I sewed with a cup of cheap coffee going cold beside me. I was always tired, but it was a good kind of tired, like I was finally moving forward. One customer messaged me a photo of their baby wrapped in one of my blankets. The caption read, "She won't sleep without it. Thank you for making something so special." I must have read it 10 times. Then one day, something unbelievable happened. I got a message from a woman named Dana. She said she owned a small baby boutique in town and had seen my work through a customer. She wanted to meet. I almost didn't go. I kept thinking, what if I mess up? What if she laughs? What if she thinks it's silly? But I went. I packed a few sample pieces in a paper bag and took the bus across town with Liam in a carrier strapped to my chest. Dana was kind, professional, and very direct. "I think these are beautiful," she said, running her hands over the stitching. "I'd like to place an order. Maybe 20 sets to start. Think you can handle that?" I nodded so fast my eyes blurred. 20. When I got home, I sat on the couch, still holding Liam, and cried. Not the sad kind of cry, the kind that shakes your whole chest because something finally feels real. I kissed the top of Liam's head and whispered, "We're going to be okay." Because for the first time in a long while, I truly believed it. 2 years passed. Liam was now a chubby, wild-haired toddler who ran around the apartment like he owned it. Liam's covers had turned into more than I ever imagined. I had a website, a growing list of returning customers, and a small team of 2 other moms who helped sew from home. We weren't rich, but the bills got paid on time. Liam had everything he needed. I even started saving for preschool. One sunny afternoon, I was outside the storefront I'd just begun renting, a tiny space on Main Street with a glass window and my logo hand-painted above the door. I was setting out a little display of baby blankets when I heard a voice I hadn't heard in years. "Emily?" I turned, and there he was. Kyle. He looked different. Hair neatly cut, clothes clean and ironed. He wore that same smirk I remembered too well, but now it felt out of place, like an old photo that didn't belong on the wall anymore. "Wow," he said, giving me a once-over. "You look good. I always believed in you." I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He nodded toward the shop window. "This all yours?" "It is." He glanced inside, then noticed Liam through the glass, sitting on a stool in one of my custom onesies, navy blue with a little patch that read Liam's cover stitched over the heart. Kyle tilted his head. "What's that from?" I looked him straight in the eye. "Calm. Clear. Our story," I said, my voice steady. "But you're not in it anymore." That hit him. I saw it, the flicker behind his eyes, like he suddenly realized he wasn't part of the picture. Not the business. Not Liam. Not me. Just a man on the outside, knocking on a door that no longer opened for him. He tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Em. I was young. I messed up, I admit that. But look at you. You've made it. We could try again. For Liam's sake." I shook my head. "You had your chance. Liam has everything he needs, and he doesn't need confusion or chaos walking back through the door." He opened his mouth to argue, but I turned and walked inside. Liam looked up at me and smiled, his hands full of fabric scraps. I smiled back and locked the door behind me. Kyle stood there for a moment longer, then walked away. And just like that, the ghost was gone. I didn't feel satisfaction or rage, just clarity. He had been a chapter, nothing more. And now I was writing something new, without him. I thought that was the end of it, that Kyle had faded into the past for good. But a few weeks after he showed up at the shop, I got served papers at home. He was filing for joint custody. In the documents, he claimed I was unstable, said my business was barely surviving, and accused me of keeping Liam from him out of spite. I sat on the couch holding the envelope, hands trembling. It was like a punch to the chest. But this time, I didn't fall apart. I took a breath, put Liam down for a nap, and opened my laptop. I found a family lawyer and made an appointment the same day. I used nearly all my savings from the business. It hurt, but Liam was worth every cent. The court date came fast. Kyle arrived looking polished again, smug and confident like he'd already won. He told the judge I was emotionally unstable, that I used Liam as a pawn, that I didn't provide a real home. He threw in words like unfit and resentful, trying to paint me as bitter and vengeful. I didn't interrupt. I didn't cry. When it was my turn, I stood and spoke quietly but clearly. I told the judge about Liam's routines, his doctor visits, his favorite books. I showed receipts, photos, letters from neighbors and customers who'd watched me raise him with care. I explained how I'd built my business from nothing, how I balanced work and parenting every single day. But more than that, I let them see the truth. Not just paperwork, but love. The way I looked at my son. The way everything I did was for him. The judge listened. Carefully. He didn't say much until the very end. Then came the decision, full legal and physical custody to me. Kyle looked stunned. He didn't even speak as we left the courtroom. Outside, I stepped into the sun with Liam's tiny hand in mine. I didn't smile. Not yet. But I stood taller. My heart felt steady, strong, because for once, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was protecting what I'd built, with truth, with work, with love. And I wasn't afraid of Kyle anymore. The little storefront I used to dream about? It's real now. It sits at the corner of Maple and 4th, with wide windows that let in golden afternoon light, and a bell over the door that jingles softly every time someone walks in. The hand-painted sign reads Liam's covers, just like it did when it was nothing more than a name I whispered to myself during long, lonely nights. But now, it's carved into the wood, bold and permanent. Inside, there are shelves of soft baby blankets, custom onesies, and tiny embroidered animals. A small sewing table sits by the window, and in the back, there's a little corner filled with toys and a beanbag chair, Liam's corner. He's 4 now, bright-eyed and full of questions. He loves helping, even if it's just folding fabric or greeting customers with a shy, "Hi, I'm Liam." He tells people proudly, "My mom made this store." People smile when they hear it. So do I. Life's not perfect. It's still hard sometimes, balancing orders late nights, spilled juice on new fabric. But there's laughter now. There's rhythm. There's peace. And sometimes Kyle walks by. I see him through the window, just a quick glance. He always walks alone, sometimes in a suit, sometimes in worn-out jeans, but always with that expression, like he's trying to figure out what happened. Like he can't quite believe this is the same woman he once dismissed. The one he called stuck. He's never come back inside since the day I turned him away. He doesn't wave, doesn't try to talk, just looks through the glass for a second, then keeps walking. And I don't feel anger when I see him. Not anymore. I used to think revenge had to be loud, screaming, slamming doors, big speeches. But it turns out peace feels better, softer, deeper. Revenge is waking up each day knowing you built something beautiful with the same hands that were once shaking with fear. It's watching your son laugh under sunlight while you help a new mom choose her baby's first blanket. It's knowing you did exactly what he swore you couldn't. He said no one would ever want a single mom, that I'd beg him to come back, that I'd fail. But I didn't beg. I didn't break. I became everything he never imagined. And the best part, I didn't do it in spite of being a single mom. I did it because I am one. To every woman who's been told she's too much, too little, too broken, too used, too stuck, you're not. I know what it feels like to sit in silence, holding a baby in one arm and your breath in the other. To stare at the ceiling at 2 a.m., wondering how your life got so small, how your dreams slipped through the cracks. I've been there. And I need you to know, there's still more ahead. I didn't plan any of this. I didn't wake up one day and say, I'll build a business from scratch while raising a baby alone. I just did the next right thing. I sewed one blanket. I replied to one message. I opened my door to one neighbor. And over time, that turned into something. There were nights I wanted to quit. Days I felt invisible. Moments when I believed every cruel thing Kyle ever said about me. But then I'd hear Liam giggle. Or he'd wrap his little fingers around mine. Or he'd look up at me with those big eyes like I was his whole world. And honestly, that was enough. He gave me purpose before I ever found my strength. He didn't care that I was tired or scared or figuring it out as I went. He just needed me. And needing to show up for him helped me show up for myself. We built something together, me and Liam. Something soft and strong at the same time. Something real. So if you're in that place right now, where everything feels like too much and not enough all at once, I see you. I was you, and I made it through. You don't need to have it all figured out. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to begin. Start small. Be kind to yourself. And when the voice in your head tells you you're not enough, answer it like this. Yes, I am. And I always have been. To my son, thank you. For every giggle, every mess, every sleepy cuddle. You didn't just give me love. You gave me life. He said no one would ever want a single mom. Turns out, I just needed to want myself. What do you think? Was Emily right to shut the door on Kyle for good? Or should she have given him another chance for Liam's sake? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm really curious to hear your take. And if stories like this speak to you, make sure to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next one.